Hello everyone, this is Sage, welcoming you all to the Executive Corner, Expert Talks 20-minute roundup, and today we're very lucky to have Mr. Greg McGarvie, the Managing Director of ACE EVs Group. And we bring you the industry leaders, successful business owners, market and equity advocates all under the one roof to help you discover the insights of the stock market and help you understand how one can create multiple passive income streams. So in today's show, like I said, we've got Mr. Greg McGarvie, the Managing Director of ACE EVs Group. And to give you some insight, ACE EVs will be launching a unique range of fully electric light commercial vehicles and cars made for tradies and city living later this year. So keep your eyes peeled for more information, because these cars even charge your tools. So welcome, Greg. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise, Sage, and I like your introduction.
Thank you. So let's start with question one. Australia is quite behind other nations when it comes to the rollout and adoption of electric vehicles. Do you think the launch of Made in Australia ACE EVs will stimulate the adoption of electric vehicles in the country?
No doubt about it. Right at this moment, before we even open the factory doors, we have well over $2.5 million worth of vehicle reservations, and that to me is a very positive sign for us. The other thing, of course, is that we're not dependent just on Australia as a market for EVs. 70% of our vehicles will be exported, and we've already got arrangements being put in place with countries that are actually very keen to get our vehicles, but we're not ready for them.
It's a very exciting time to be speaking to you, and the government backing is amazing. If I heard correctly, $500 million, is that correct?
I wish it was. No, it's only 5 million. It's a drop in the teacup, but it's a start. And effectively, it's aimed at our vehicle to grid trial, which is it's a global first, and for Australia, a Wi-Fi moment if we execute it quickly. We've got one of the best teams globally working on it, and effectively what it means is it's an AC, bi-directional, mobile energy management system, smart meter on board and smart charger. Putting it in simple terms, it means that, Sage, if I came around to your place and said, can I borrow your power? I just plug my vehicle in, same as I plug in a mobile phone, no more complicated, and the vehicle will do a quick check of your circuit. So yes, Sage's circuit can take charging or discharging from this vehicle, and then it would start. And what we've done, and it's a purposeful focus of our group, is this vehicle is designed for weaker grids offshore to provide grid resilience and grid services. And by doing that, we in effect turn every power point into Australia, as long as you've got a lead long enough, as a charge point for our vehicle. And so the old concept that you needed a charger before you buy an electric vehicle is not true anymore.
Oh, that's great to hear. Very convenient. And currently, all electric vehicles available in Australia are supplied from international manufacturers. How is the company planning to compete with these established global players in the EV space, please?
Well, I think probably we think we're going to be very competitive because we're using a totally new technology. We call it the 3 S's, strategy, solution, and we're looking at the smart cell manufacturing, which effectively allows us to build our vehicles about 1/3 the energy input of other vehicles and up to 50% lighter, and that's critical for electric vehicles. The other part of it is our smart packs, which will be our export. So the packs are exported overseas and then assembled and built in the local country. And then the best, of course, and the crown, the jewel in the crown, I think, is our smart mobile energy management system, which is what I was just telling you about before, the AC bi-directional. And those 3 components put us ahead of anyone else, partnering with some, but ahead of most. And the only reason I've persisted here in Australia with this, and it's been a long battle, it's over 5 years, is our partners. We've got German partners out of Stuttgart and out of Taiwan, and what they bring to the table, years of vehicle intelligence and IP. In fact, Gerhardt, was involved with the smart car when it was designed with Ernst Tomke, over 20 years ago. And so, we've got vehicle history behind us, but in effect, what we have here is a mobile phone with a large battery, big wheels and seats, and it just happens to be much less expensive to drive around in than the fossil fuel smokers.
Well, fantastic. Really going to be watching the space to see how you progress with your brand new product. And as we are aware, ACE EV will be launching a unique range of fully electric, light commercial vehicles and cars later this year in Australia. Could you please elaborate more on the product offerings?
Yes, the cargo, which we started with, and we've already built one here in Australia. It was built March 2019, and it's a vehicle that has a carrying capacity, and it's aimed at last mile delivery, light business on wheels, but it's got a carrying capacity of 500 kilo, regulated speed, 85 kilometres an hour, and 3 cubic metres of space inside. Very light, just over 1,000 kilo, very nimble, and as I said, you take it home, charge it at night. Every morning it's full, not like in the old days where I got into trouble with my wife. She says, the car full, she had to take the kids to school. I said, yeah, there's enough fuel in it. And got stuck on a hill halfway to school. I was in trouble, and that's a downfall with fossil fuel vehicles. You're going to go somewhere, find a petrol station, find a reasonable price, and then fill it. Whereas with the EVs, convenience, plug in at home, full every morning. And the reality is, Sage, that the actual energy that most people use is very minimal. Very few people do more than 50 kilometres a day. The average, actually, the global average is 38. And if you're in Japan, it's 13. And if you're driving our vehicle, 50 kilometres, you use 6 to 7 kilowatt hours of energy. Your radiator, if you've got a 2-bar radiator at home, and you run it for 3 hours, that's the same energy as you'd use running our vehicle. And so we take the point that if you can't plug your vehicle in and charge slowly at home, to the equivalent of a 2-bar radiator, we've got some real problems. And our grid we've got a good grid compared to most countries.
Thank you for your insights. They were quite enlightening. I didn't realise that our grid was so small compared to other countries. And is the company planning to tap other geographies too in the future?
Our grid is quite large. It's one of the bigger ones. But what I'm saying is, it's sophisticated enough to handle every house with a 2-bar radiator switched on, which is the same energy that we'd use if you had plugged in your EV.
Right. Thanks for elaborating. Sorry. So that last point that we were trying to discuss with you is the company planning to tap any other geographies too in the future?
Yes, we're already in discussions with a whole host of countries that want our vehicle. It's a little bit embarrassing. Some of the countries we would say are emerging have actually got EV policies in place. One we're dealing with, quite interesting, it's effectively all green energy, very small percentage it's not. Hydro, wind and solar. They want our electric vehicles because at the moment they're importing fossil fuel vehicles, importing the fuel to run them, and poisoning their citizens, of course, running vehicles around in the cities. So they're very strong candidates for our EV, and as I mentioned earlier, they're actually desperate to have our vehicles, but we can't do anything until we've got our factory up and running here in Australia.
And we're really looking forward to when we'll have a date finalised for that. Now, in Australia, we don't have that many public charging stations at the moment. You've talked about how your car can be charged at home quite easily, like a mobile phone. Do you think the lack of public charging stations will affect the outlay of EVs in Australia?
No. You only have to look at overseas, the uptake, and you only have to look at some of the EV enthusiasts in Australia. There's about 6,000 running around on the roads at the moment, and I guarantee that over 80% of them are charging at home. The only difference is that they have a special charger built into their home circuit, And what I'm saying with our vehicle is that that's not required. Particularly, we'll be demonstrating that in the trials that we're running this year with our Series 4 vehicles. And that starts in Melbourne, June, July, and we're building 15 vehicles in November in South Australia, and they'll also go into trial.
Thank you for that. And at the moment, even when I think about it myself, will my next car be an electric vehicle? It kind of blows me away, just the thought of it. Do you think the government could be doing more to help the intervention and support Australians in the transition to electric vehicles?
Certainly, all the governments could be. Not one of them is really doing as much as it should be. And it's really a bit like the old days with cigarette smoking. In the early days, there's a reluctance for the governments to step in and say, no, yes, this is hazardous to our health. And electric and fossil fuel vehicles, really the same thing, hazardous to our health, and hazardous to nature. And the main problem with electric vehicles is, with fossil fuel vehicles, is that they burn fuel, very inefficient, only 24% of it's used to actually move you along the road. And the exhaust they produce is bad for respiratory and circulatory conditions in people. And globally, there's about 8 million people die from the effects of vehicle pollution. And that's why cities like London, New Delhi and others are banning fossil fuel vehicles from city centres. But look, the crunch really says with electric vehicles, and whether you buy one or not, will be whether or not you want to save 80% of your household budget. Anyone with an electric vehicle, the running costs about a fifth what it is with a fossil fuel vehicle. And then, as I said, the convenience of having a vehicle at home, the beauty of driving them, they're quiet, comfortable. And I was doing an address at the National Renewables Agricultural event in Dubbo last Wednesday, 300 farmers there. And so I said, look, I'm not going to go ahead with this talk. It's not relevant unless I know who's going to be buying vehicles. And I said, how many of you stand up if you're not going to buy an electric vehicle in the next 5 years? Only 10% of the room stood up. So that's 270 people considering electric vehicles out of 300. And the reality is, back pocket, hip pocket. I mean, if you've got a vehicle you can run $5 a week compared to $50 a week with your fossil fuel vehicle, natural.
That's really great news. I mean, the fact that it's cheaper to run, that it has less carbon emissions, those are two massive ticks in favour of the future, I think. And climate change has emerged as a hot topic in Australia of late, with the nations all accelerating its pace to achieve carbon emission targets. How do you think shifting to EV fleets can further help the nation tackle its carbon emission problems?
Very significant. If the whole of Australia transitioned to electric vehicles overnight, that's 24% reduction in pollution and emissions. And that's significant. And what my focus is, this group that we've got together, I really call it an environmental business, because the more vehicles we roll out, the more we remove the foot of fossil fuel off the neck of nature. And that's a problem. It's the pollution from fossil fuel, the carbon levels as well, but that is really impacting our natural environment. And it's very important for our grandchildren that we try and leave them something that's not too damaged.
That's great to hear that people like you are at the forefront of this emerging technology, and really looking forward to seeing how you progress in the space. And according to you, how can Australia accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles in the coming years?
Look, the easiest way to do it is for the noise out of government, and I mean the noise, that it's positive noise. It's providing information that doesn't misdirect people. At the moment, the messages are very confused. There are people out there that are still claiming that fossil fuel vehicles are better for the environment, and they're very few, of course, but they're out there. And Australia's really in quite a precarious position because we don't have energy reserves that last any more than 21 days. If the whole country transitions to electric, we've got no more worries about energy security. We're as secure as the sun shining every day, and the energy can be stored in our vehicles. That energy can be used in emergencies. We've got a swarm capability in our vehicle. If there's a disaster in one area, like the Gippsland fires, electric vehicles could be driven down there, and our vehicles are fitted with a power point as well, so that homes down there could plug in, they'd have their light, they'd have their communication, have all their necessities until the disaster period passed. The other great thing about our vehicles is the fact that power goes out, you can run your house off the vehicle up to 3 days.
Amazing. And I think the government is actually focusing on that with increasing the telecommunications and the access to essential services like that. And if these cars can help to ease the load off the central infrastructure, that would be amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Greg. That has been a fabulous show on this hot off the press news. So really appreciate your time. Was there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we finish up for the day?
Certainly. Everyone keep your ears open. And Adelaide, 9th of June, big event with ACE Electric Vehicle Group. Unusual for a vehicle manufacturing group that will be coming out for Australia with some real solutions that will put Australia up there with other vehicles, other EV countries globally. So June the 9th, early morning.
Fantastic.
Adelaide.
You heard it from Greg McGarvie himself, the Managing Director of ACE EVs. Going to be in Adelaide on June the 9th. And if you'd like any further information, please head to the website as well, which is aceevs.com. Is that correct?
I'll give it to you. It's www.ace-ev.com.au. And people can go to that website. If they subscribe, they'll get occasional updates about what's happening. And in effect, Sage, that's where all our $2.5 million worth of vehicle reservations occurred. And I'm looking for a spike after today's conversation from all the people that watched your show.
Yes, of course. That'll be wonderful. Hopefully this has been a beneficial event for you. Thank you again for your time, and everyone out there, thanks for watching. And as we say, stay apprised, invest wise with Kalkine.